Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Dr. Kate Lund with me. Dr. Kate, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am really excited for this conversation. I'm going to have you introduce yourself to the good people, and then we will talk about resilience and how we get there.
Sounds great. Yes, so thank you again. And I'm a psychologist. I've been doing this work for 20 plus years. I am a mom. My boys are 18. They're twins, and hard to believe, but yes, they're 18. And let's see, I'm an author. I just recently wrote a book, The Keys to Resilient Parenting. Actually, I should say Step Away, The Keys to Resilient Parenting. So I'm planning to do more of that moving forward. In my clinical work, in my coaching work, I tend to work mostly with parents who are struggling with some sort of an issue, either within themselves or with their children, and we work to help them to optimize within their own unique context and become as resilient as possible. And in that process, we help them to model some of these things for their kids so that their kids are better able to move through and beyond the challenges that are inevitably going to come up for them. And the other thing that I do these days is I volunteer as part of the animal assisted therapy team at Seattle Children's Hospital with my dog Wally, which I absolutely love. I feel that that's a really important piece of what's happening here in my world these days.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we'll have you on to talk about animal assisted therapy another time because I do think that that is something that is increasingly on the rise and of interest to people, the ways in which animals can support nervous systems. In fact, that's an area of real interest for me. So we'll come back to that.
Cool. Okay.
um, in the meantime, you said something before we hit record. Before we get to that though, I want to talk about this term resilience because we think that we all know what we're talking about, but let's just make sure that we all know what we're talking about. What are we talking about when we say we want people to be resilient?
Great question, because it's true. Oftentimes we're thinking about resilience through this narrow lens of like a challenge comes up, we move through the challenge, we were resilient, and then we're not. So it's more broad what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about sort of a resilient lifestyle where we're integrating tools and strategies into our way of living so that resilience really becomes our baseline, so that we're more able to kind of ride the challenges that are inevitably going to come up for all of us, like waves through the day, as opposed to kind of this up and down type of thing that can happen.
When you say waves throughout the day versus up and down, what I just thought of was moving from a model of I'm totally fine, I'm not at all fine, I'm totally fine, I'm not at all fine to oh, this is a situation that is challenging. I'm going to use some tools and I'm going to be able to bring myself back to baseline or back to some kind of constructive state of being fairly rapidly, even though the situation hasn't fully resolved. Do I have that kind of right?
Yes, absolutely. Because that's really reality, right? That's kind of what we're all living with challenges, and they come up and they're not always fully resolved in a moment, right? And so we have to kind of be able to live within that context fully.
This is not something um, there. When I was in school, when you were a kid, when our parents were parents, this was not on the syllabus. So, how do we help parents learn this for themselves so that they can teach it to children? Because I'm imagining there's a parent education component here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it really begins with self-awareness and helping folks to understand themselves more fully and understand what they need to optimize within their own unique context. And really helping folks to focus, parents, everyone really, to focus on what is their context, because we're all coming with different experiences, different strengths, different challenges, different aptitudes, all of it. So to really hone in on what is one's context and how can we optimize within that context is so important.
All right, let's take a very common context in the families that I work with, which is one or more of the children has a diagnosis of, let's say, ADHD for a big bucket.
Mhm.
And then parent might be discovering or suspecting, or maybe not be quite ready to acknowledge that they also have an ADHD brain. Is that
Mhm.
the kind of context we're talking about, or are we talking about something different here?
Yeah, no, that is definitely a potential context, and if one has an ADHD brain, that is the context in which they're living. So what can we do to help them optimize within that context? And really important to help them to see the possibilities for optimizing within that context and not letting that reality of an ADHD brain hold them back or bog them down or make them think that, well, this is the way my brain is. I can't do X, Y, and Z.
Okay. Okay. So we're building in resilience, sort of this ability to move through difficult experiences with the brains that we have, with the nervous systems that we have, with the lifestyles that we have,
Yes.
maybe, or maybe we want to change some things about the lifestyle.
Yep.
How does an adult working on that help a child? Because I know that there are maybe not most of the listeners of this podcast, but certainly many parents out there who are like, fix my kid. My kid needs to shape up. That's all that's going on here.
Right. Yes. A very common situation that comes up for sure. And so the most important kind of first step, aside from this idea of self-awareness that we can help parents with, and I really teach everyone this up front, is this idea of modulating our stress response and sort of trying our best to show up as level as possible each day. Because if we're starting up here and a stressor hits or we're overwhelmed and we escalate to the point of shutdown, we're not going to be able to show up fully, if at all, for our kids, our family, ourselves. So teaching parents to modulate their stress response is a first step. And so I love this technique developed by a physician in Boston in the 1970s named Herbert Benson. He developed something called the relaxation response. Super duper simple. It's you come up with a word or a phrase that you find soothing in some way and you breathe. So I have folks practice for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes later in the day. So they're bookending the day, starting to integrate what that modulated feeling feels like during the day. Also, really effective because they can put this technique in their back pocket, use it before a stressful conversation, a stressful thing happens at the house, their kids are melting down. They might take that step back, do this technique for a few minutes, come back more level, be able to respond as opposed to react. So, really, a lot of ways to use it. But for first and foremost, it's figuring out what that modulated space feels like in themselves and how to show up that way each and every day. Easier said than done, takes practice and consistency, but a really important piece to integrate.
I actually love that so much because so much of therapy, even coaching, is so cerebral. And
Mm.
modulation, awareness comes from the body.
Mhm.
If our brain is flooded with a bunch of stress hormones, we can't think straight and we can't do anything that we know we're supposed to do when we get stressed. What you're suggesting here, and I just love it and I want to call attention to it, is we teach ourselves to recognize the feeling of regulation so that it becomes consciously familiar.
Mhm.
And that's really a beautiful bridge for and very practical. It's like mindfulness. It's with the mindfulness, but without the mindfulness, so that people don't get turned off.
Exactly, exactly. And bogged down by all of those pieces.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've modulated the adults,
Right.
and
And
I'm. What's that?
no, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
didn't.
And before we hit record, I said, What do people most need to know that they don't know? And tell me what you said, and then we'll sort of talk about what happens on the kid side and the parent conversation side of things here.
Perfect. Yeah. So what I said was really the idea is to help parents to see the possibilities on the other side of the challenges that they're facing. Particularly important if their child is struggling with something, if they're struggling with something. We want to help folks to see the possibilities on the other side of those challenges and help them find a way to move towards that possibility.
And okay, I want to be clear on what you are saying and what you're not saying. And I'm going to give you an example. I actually just told this story earlier today. My 18-year-old applied to an early decision college and was rejected on the same day that her best friend was accepted to that same college.
Oh,
Yeah. And
oh,
so
oh, oh.
here's what happened.
Mhm.
And this was one of my, it's one of the moments I'm prouder of. Let's put it that way, which was my daughter came into my room. It was late at night, cried her little eyes out, and I wanted to fix it so bad, so bad. And I didn't. And I checked myself and I let her cry. And I said, I know, honey. I know, honey. Oh, gosh. Yeah. It's not fair. She went to bed. She stewed. 24 hours later, she says, I wonder where else I should apply. So, so I think what I'm asking is number one, obviously that went quite well and she's a very resilient person. But the question I'm asking is, right, if I had led with seeing the possibility on the other side, in that moment, that wasn't the moment. That wasn't the time. So there's a timing thing here.
Precisely. And I just have to mention that we haven't quite gotten exactly to where you are, but we have an ED application out there. We have a date when the whatever is going to come in. My husband and I are struggling with this very thing, right? And we've had this same conversation. And so I feel you on that front. I feel you on that front. But you're exactly right. If you had jumped in with, but there's so many other possibilities for you. Let's think about them. No, 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 not the right moment for that. You're exactly right. There is that space that has to happen, particularly, I mean, really for all experiences that our children are having. We have to either be there with them to feel, let them, we have to understand what the experience is, let them experience those feelings without jumping in there to try to fix and solve. It's so hard. Trust me, I get this with the college thing. Exactly. Like we've been doing this. My husband and I are like, what do we do? How do we handle this? But what you did is precisely right. And it's that way for everything. Like let's say a child has a hard soccer game and they feel like they didn't play well, or they're the goalie and they let this winning goal for the other team go through. So upset, they're devastated. And so instead of trying to resolve their feelings, fix how they're feeling on the car ride home, it's just being there in silence, letting them know that you understand this was hard, this feels bad. Let's just sit with it for a bit without trying to jump in there and fix it. So, yes, spot on. There is a timing thing.
Okay. So we've done the like, I call that validation. People call it different things, but sitting, stewing in your juices, perhaps. But this is real and this is serious,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
humans are we have emotion.
Mhm.
We must feel emotions. We cannot think emotions. We cannot do emotions. We have to feel them. And if we don't feel them, then we're going to eat them, Netflix them, over exercise, overwork, just kind of fix it all the time. And
Mhm.
that's not good for anybody.
Mhm. No.
So we do this feeling part. Where's the show me the talk about the like looking past it to the possibilities, because that's where I'm interested next.
Right. And so it's developmentally dependent, right? But in the case of an 18-year-old who's upset about a college decision, and then they've had that time to kind of think and work through it in their mind, when they're ready, hopefully they'll come to you to kind of start talking it through. But if you get the sense that they're ready, dispositionally, maybe the kid's not going to come to you. you can kind of enter into a conversation with broad open-ended questions to see if they're ready to enter into that more of a hmm, possibilities discussion, or well gosh, where might you want to look next, or what are you thinking about next steps, kind of giving them the power, the control, and they're thinking about the next steps, but you're curious about what those are, that kind of a thing. So again, you're not trying to create the direction, you're not trying to fix the challenge, but you're kind of joining with them in an authentic human way. And that's really a pillar of what we want to help everyone to do, parents across the developmental continuum, is find a way to connect in an authentic human way with your child. And yeah.
It's so interesting when you were talking. That's the what you're talking about is that I'm going to struggle to put words around it. Actually, it's a form of leadership, right? It's a
Mhm.
um, but what is I'm again I'm struggling to put a word with the leadership aspect. It's not top down. It's very collaborative,
Yes.
right? But and it's sort of this bringing along of your child again at whatever developmental stage they're at, which is really important to know, right? Because we're not going to say to a 6 year old, well, what do you think you could do differently next time, right?
Precisely. Yeah.
So we might be offering those, A or B, like which one do you think would feel better for you next time this happened or whatever it is. But that leadership of like just being kind of even half a step kind of ahead and to the right, um, as we walk down this path together. Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you think of that? Like, how do you explain that position or that role or that action to parents?
Well, it really evolves from that authentic human connection, that ability to be there, with the emotions, just kind of observe and be there with the experience, the feelings that your child is having. And also, not being afraid to, again, in a developmentally appropriate way, when the time is right, share some of the challenges that you've had, as in your life, or as a kid around their age, but not saying it in a way like, oh, well, I had that same challenge and this is what I did, but just kind of allowing them to know that, oh, okay, because that's very helpful for our kids to know that we also have struggled in some similar ways. And it doesn't mean we're going to handle the situation the same way, but it means that we've struggled, we've pushed through, we've ended up where we are. So, maybe that's possible for me too, is what our kid is likely thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very powerful when parents model their own imperfections, shall we say, to their children, right?
Yes.
They struggle with because remember, children think that their adults are perfect.
Right.
And if
Right.
their adults are not perfect, it must be the child's fault. That's the whole, like,
Yeah.
right, developmental kind of mind at work.
Mhm.
And so when parents can show up, and I appreciate what you're saying, you have such a really grounded, practical manner that I know people are picking up on, and I find it very compatible with my manner as well, which is we can allow kids to see our weakness, and I'm putting that in air quotes, without being weak.
Yes.
But sometimes people, adults in particular, have a hard time with that. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because, sometimes folks get caught in this lens of perfectionism, and we as parents need to be perfect, and our kids need to be perfect on many levels. And that can be really, that can cause a lot of issues because perfection is really not a thing. And to be able to acknowledge where we as parents fall short, and give our kids the idea that as long as they're doing their very best, that's what we care about as opposed to the specific outcome.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a really important piece of it. And through this process of building self-awareness, um, kind of talking folks through the realities of the things that they're facing, we try to uncover that reality that perfectionism is, perfect really doesn't exist.
Right.
And what does it look like to be optimized within your own unique context? And how can you help your child to do the same? And sort of understanding your child within their context is really important also because we can't, compare our kids, our own kids, siblings necessarily. We can't compare them to their friends, Some kids are just going to end up in different places. Some kids will struggle in different ways. And that's reality and that's okay. So understanding our kids in that way, I think is very, very important. Understanding ourselves in that way, first and foremost, and then helping our kids to understand themselves as well. Really, really key.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about when my children were small and they're 3.5 years apart. My son, so there was pretty at that time pretty significant age difference, but my son was a person who could handle some variation in the routine. So I
Mhm.
knew, I could say at 5 o'clock, hey, guess what? We're going out for dinner. And he would be fine with that.
Mhm.
And maybe he would get to bed a little late and his system could totally absorb that. At the same age of my daughter was not a person who could handle a change like that on the dime of like, hey, we're going to go out to dinner. That would have wrecked her. And so to your point about, we don't want to compare kids and that each child has their own context, even within the same context of the family,
Mhm.
right? Because they're living with the same parents in the same house. This notion that in order to develop resilience, they needed different things at different times, right? There is no
100%.
resilience formula here.
100%. There is no one size fits all in any of this, right? And so definitely is the approach is dependent on, who the kid is and understanding your child within their context. I mean, we have a very clear example of that here in that we have 18-year-old twin boys and very different kids. They're very close. They're close friends, but growing up, one of them struggled a bit academically and had some challenges that kind of held him back in many ways. And we really worked within his context to help him overcome some of those and figure out how he could, advocate for himself in the classroom and start to believe in his ability to see those small steps of progress that he was taking, all of that. Whereas his brother, extremely academic from the get-go, we haven't touched his academic stuff since he was in sixth grade, just kind of self, initiation all the way. Little bumpy now during this college process just because everyone is stressed, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, how to really see each child within their own context has been key. And it's not like a button that's pushed, it's a process. And the our son who struggled a bit academically, still has some challenges that need to be kind of talked through. But the cool thing is he feels comfortable bringing those forth. He'll call me and he'll be like, "Hey, I really worried about such and such exam. I really hope it goes well. What do you think about this, this, and this?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Let's talk it through." Whereas the other one challenges in a different way, different anxieties that might come up. So totally case dependent, and there's no one size fits all for any of us in any of this.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's hard to put a stop to this conversation, but I think I'm going to do it right here, right now. Um, Dr. Kate, if people want to learn more about you, maybe read your book, how do they do that?
Amazing. Thank you. So it would be my website, www.katelundspeaks.com. And the book, Step Away, The Keys to Resilient Parenting, is available there as well as on Amazon and actually wherever books are sold, really.
Perfect. We will link to all of that in the show notes. Dr. Kate, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.